Welcome to the Birth Lounge Podcast, an empowering space for expecting and new parents to hear candid conversations with experts to learn how to craft their ideal birth. You've got scary questions that you want to stop Googling, and we've got evidence-based answers with data to back it all up. Hello, and welcome back to the Birth Lounge Podcast. You guys, this is actually a part 2. So if you haven't listened to last week's podcast, go back and listen to that. I have on CPM, Certified Professional Midwife, Melissa Chappell, and she is talking to us all about cervical checks, finding the right provider, and where we left off last week was early pushing urge. How do you know when you're ready to push? How do you take advantage of that fetal ejection reflex? So, Melissa, picking up right where we left off, I want to talk about maybe a false sense of when it's time to push versus the reflex taking over. One of the things that I teach, or Tranquility by Hihi, our whole team teaches clients to be on the lookout for in labor. And you're going to feel this with an epidural as well. You guys, don't be afraid to turn down your epidural. We need you to be having feeling down there. It's not going to come back in an overwhelming, like painful sense. And if it does, you can turn it right back up. You are allowed to have authority over the medications that are administered to you. But one of the things that we teach you is it shouldn't be intermittent pressure. We are looking for constant pressure, like constant rectal pressure, constant vaginal pressure. As that pressure is kind of like building up, it can bounce back and forth. You're like at first like, oh, I feel it in my butt. I feel like I might be pooping, or like I gotta poop. And then you're like, oh wait, no, it's in my vagina. Okay, it's back in my butt. And it bounces back and forth. And then your baby will be so low that it'll be constant. Melissa, do you find that in your practice? And then also, how do we know that it's not the intermittent versus, okay, now it's time for me to really push?
Yeah, such good questions. Such good questions. So I think, like you said at the beginning, or maybe it was last week, but you said, if you're feeling like, you're having a conversation about it, it's not time, because you won't be able to have a conversation about it. You'll feel this like overwhelming urge. I love what you said about turning the epidural down. I'm such a big fan of that. It's scary to people because they think, oh, wait a minute, now I'm going to have this like this pain, but that's not, it's different, right? It's very, very, very different. And it's so helpful to be able to feel when you're supposed to push. So people will have pressure, right? Epidurals don't take away pressure, but they, which is actually great for pushing. That's really, really good. But let's see. So I had kind of the way, I think as midwives, and there's actually a study done on this, that midwives can hear where their clients are in labor, that they like played sounds of women in labor from midwives, and midwives were able to say, she's 6 centimeters, she's 8 centimeters, she's about to push baby out, she's in early labor. And while that doesn't always hold true for us, like sometimes I really think someone's about to push a baby out and they're 5 centimeters, so it doesn't always hold true because people cope in different ways and people make different noises. But it's actually quite common to have people like make a kind of they have like an upward trajectory of noises that they make, as they're getting closer and closer to labor. So, to pushing. So when you have somebody who is having an urge to push, but she's not telling you that she has an urge to push, or she's just kind of making that sound, or maybe you say, oh, did you feel a little bit like pushing on that last one? She might say, yeah, just a little bit at the peak. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about, is that intermittent feeling, where you don't feel it like for the whole contraction. Your body's not like overwhelmingly taking you over, So I usually what you have to do is just wait. It's just the body's like ramping up. The body's getting ready. That last little bit of the cervix is melting away. And then you get to a point where people just are, and they're making that really loud pushing downward, that overwhelming urge to push is what I call it. And so a lot of times I'll say to my clients, in lieu of checking them, I will say instead, I'll say, okay, I want you to really listen to your body here. What is your body telling you to do? If you are not feeling an overwhelming urge to push, don't push. Like, listen to what your body's saying, because I think a lot of people think like, oh, the second I feel the urge to push, I'm supposed to start pushing, because that's what all the books told me. And that's what the childbirth education classes told me. And so I think if you can remind people of that, like, don't do what they told you. It's great to get prepared. You need to be prepared. You need to take classes, because we've lost these cultures of, women groups who like get together and tell each other what to expect and how it's going to go. We've lost it. So we need childbirth classes. I tell all of my clients, like, the people who do the very best in birth are those who read tons of books, hire a doula, take childbirth classes, right? And pick a good provider. But in that moment, maybe you've seen on TV, or maybe you learned in your class that, like, when you feel that urge to push, you're supposed to push. But that's not the case. You're supposed to wait until it's so overwhelming that even if I told you not to push, it wouldn't matter. You'd have to do it anyway. So I usually, just to kind of go back to your question, like, how do you discern between the two? I, like you said, the urge to push that's not really there, people are feeling it at the peak of the contraction, but they don't usually feel it for the whole contraction. And then usually when the contraction's over, even if people feel an overwhelming urge to push, they will usually have, like, they'll feel intense pressure, they'll feel rectal pressure, but they'll get a break, and then that contraction will start again, and they'll be like, whoa, I've got this overwhelming urge to push. I've had people tell me before, like, oh, just so you know, I don't ever get the urge to push. And what I want to say back to them is, just so you know, you weren't given the opportunity to get to the point where you had the urge to push.
Totally.
So some people will get all the way to 10 centimeters and they'll be told to push, because if you don't push, your baby's never going to come out. Well, what would happen if she was like under a tree in the woods? Like, eventually her body's going to tell her to push that baby out, So I think that sometimes people can be fully dilated 10 centimeters and their bodies are still like aligning, and we don't know what's happening. We don't know. I mean, we kind of know, like science kind of tells us like what's happening with the hormonal shifts, but there are a million things that we'll never know, that we don't know, that could be happening emotionally and mentally and spiritually, that have nothing to do with what's going on physically. And maybe that person needs all those things to align before she's ready to really push. So I just tell people, like, hey, if you don't feel the urge, like, rest. We call it the rest and be thankful stage, right? And a lot of providers,
I love it.
a lot of the hospital providers don't know about the rest and be thankful stage. And a lot of times I'll have people that are just having these insane contractions, and they're just like very powerful, very, very powerful. They're in transition, and then they kind of slow down. And I look at my apprentices and I say, I think we're in the rest and be thankful stage. And then the next contractions that start are like, you hear the mom start going at the top, and then it just gets more and more and more powerful. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just got like full body chills.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so
geeking out over this. This is so good. Okay, so I do want to talk about the scenario that, we all don't want to believe that happens, but it does, absolutely. And I talk about this on Instagram a lot, and you can scan the comments and you can see that a significant number of people experience being told, don't push, the doctor's not here yet, you can't have your baby. And a large number of the people are like, I can't stop. I just told them, like, you better get ready. And personally, that's my response as well. Like, you're a nurse, you better get ready. You work on L&D,
figure it out.
Like, catch this baby. I also encourage parents that if your baby is coming so fast, reach down and catch your own baby. Like, what a special moment for the universe to have kind of aligned, where they were like, look, you don't need a doctor, do it. But what do you say? Like, how, it is, I do want to hold space with, like, that is abusive. It is coercive care. We don't want you holding in your baby, and heaven forbid, we do not want a nurse holding in your baby physically. Like, it causes just so much trauma, physically, emotionally, mentally. It can hurt your baby. So make sure that we don't have that. But in the case that we have a nurse saying, like, no, don't push, the doctor's not here yet, talk us through how you would navigate that as maybe that birthing person.
I mean, as a newer doula, I probably would have been like, just keep breathing, good job. But now I'd be like, you push that damn baby out, you do what you want,
Listen to your body. It really comes back to, like, listening to your body and honoring what those sensations are telling you to do. And that's movement too. So even if they're like, no, you can't get on your back, or like, no, you can't get on hands and knees. And if your body is telling you that you need to and you can, you should, you guys. You need to listen to those urges.
Yeah. So I think do you remember the, the story? I mean, you're probably alluding to that generally when you talked about how it can be so damaging, but there was a story about a woman who was made to keep her baby in, and they actually held her legs closed, and she had severe nerve damage, and her baby had issues as well. And she sued the hospital and got millions of dollars because what happened to her was not okay. Right.
Yeah, that
Like,
was in Alabama,
yeah,
Carolina.
yes, you know the story.
Yeah.
So it's not okay. It's not okay for somebody to do that. It's absolutely abusive care. Like, it's not okay. So that nurses, so let's give some credit to nurses and say that I have seen doctors make nurses cry. Like, doctors are, right? Like, nurses bear the brunt of the work in labor and delivery. Mm-hmm. They are overworked. They're screamed at, yelled at, not just by patients, but by their own people that they're supporting, like like the doctors that they work with. But let's go back to this. Who's hiring who? Yeah. You've hired these people to take care of you. You've hired these people to make sure that you're safe. You've hired these people to make sure that your baby's safe, to really, really support you and care for you. Mm-hmm. And if you have the urge to push it, this is what I always tell to people. Like, I have a lot of people in my practice that are like, the dads get so nervous. Like, what if the baby comes out and you're not here? What if we're driving in the car and the baby comes out? And this is what I always say. It's the babies that don't come out that are the ones we worry about. Yeah. If the babies that fly out, I'm not worried about those babies.
Everything's going right. That's why it's so fast.
I know. They fly out, they're fine. They've got like all this pressure and stuff happening, and they're not stuck in the birth canal for super long time. And their labors obviously went so fast that they're flying out. And so they haven't been like had those like long contractions and been subjected to like a long labor. Like, they do great. So if this baby's gonna fly out, I mean, I've had clients come to me and say, my last baby, I went in, they didn't believe me, the baby came out, my husband caught it. Like, I was in the hospital bed. Like, did anything bad happen? No, nothing bad happened. Babies come out. They come out, right? They're supposed to come out. So if it happens that fast and they can't get the doctor there, oh, well, too bad. These nurses are amazing at catching babies. They do it all the time. But the reason that they freak out is because they get in trouble. Mm-hmm. They get really, really, really destroyed if they catch a baby. Mm-hmm. I mean, like abused. I've heard of many nurses getting just like raked over the coals because they caught a baby and didn't make the mom wait. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of caught between this, like, okay, like, I really want to support this woman because I care about, that's why I went into nursing in the first place, because I want to care for people, right? So they want to support this mom and this baby. They want to help her and support her by catching her baby for her. But then they also know that if they do that, they're probably going to get in trouble. So, but just go back to what, I mean, like, if you're there and she pushes her baby out and the doctor comes in, you can, so I do a lot of modeling in my doula work, or like, I have to go to hospital births still as a midwife, and I turn into the doula. So I still do doula work a lot if I have like a hospital transfer, but I do a lot of stuff like, let's say it was Nurse Jones. Okay. I would say that, let's say the doctor shows up, the baby's out, and the doctor's like maybe starting to, be mean to her and the mom or something. I would say, wow, Nurse Jones, you did such a good job. That was so fast. Like, none of us could have foreseen that, right? I'm so glad you were here to keep the mom and the baby safe. And so I'll do a lot of that, so in earshot of the doctor, so that the doctor can understand that, like, no, this nurse did us is serving us, like she was helping us, or he or she. And then with the, I do that with the clients too. This is just like another side note. But I'll say, like, I was at a hospital birth the other day, and this student doctor came in, and she's like a family practice student doctor, so hadn't really done birth very much, but I didn't know that. I thought she was like an OB resident. Got it. And so I said, I don't remember what her name was. Let's just say it was like Dr. Smith or something. I said, Dr. Smith, are you so amazed by her? Isn't she doing such a good job? Like, I am just like, I'm just mind blown by how good this mama is doing. And she kind of looked at me and she was like, she like didn't answer. And so I was like kind of upset at her. I'm like, come on, throw us a bone. Like,
I set you up perfectly for that. Like all you had to do was like, yeah, this is 1 year.
I know, I set it up. I know. But then I learned later that she was just like sort of shy and terrified because this was like one of the first births she'd ever been to. So she didn't know. I mean, you know, but anyway, that's one way that I think can be really helpful for doulas and even partners, you know, like, and say like, but even a mom, honestly, like some of your people who are taking your class could be like, Dr. Smith, I'm doing a damn good job, aren't I? and then Dr. Smith, what is Dr. Smith going to say? He better say, yes, you are. You are doing.
Or he's fired.
Yeah, or he's fired.
Get out and give me someone.
I have had clients do that. I've had clients say, you're not working for me. Get me a different doctor.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it makes a big difference. If you're clashing with your nurse or your provider, ask for a new one, because getting someone in there that you feel safe with and respected by and
and people don't know that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
People don't know that that's an option, and it totally is an option. So yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to talk about something that you've kind of dropped along the way. It's like practice pushing. So let me tell you just anecdotally what our team has seen. And I will tell you that these are all hospital births. They've not been at any home births. And the clients that we've seen this happen also all had an epidural. Makes sense why we haven't seen it at a home birth, right? But swollen cervix because we pushed too early. So now that we've kind of defined what it feels like to have that intermittent rectal vaginal pressure and knowing like, oh, I'm getting there, but I'm not quite ready to push. And that overwhelming sense of like, okay, now I'm here, I'm ready to push. What about when we don't have that sense of pushing, but your providers are maybe pressuring you to push and they say that your baby is low, but we push for actually a couple hours and then you end up with a swollen cervix? Talk us through what's in your head. Just like, how could we avoid this? What did maybe we do wrong? What could we do different in the future? What were some things that we could have considered? Because we have seen this situation actually a couple times. And I think people don't know about it, and I think you should. And I also would love for our team to be able to maybe avoid this for some of our clients.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that so people have an epidural and they're checked and their cervix is not all the way dilated?
No, they're all the way. They're 10, and the doctors say like, yeah, your baby is low. You're 10 centimeters. We should start pushing. And these people are like, okay, I mean, I feel pressure down there, but I'm not feeling like a ton of pressure. So we are pushing too early. That's one thing, is we haven't waited for that fetal ejection reflex to be activated. But after we've pushed for like 2 hours, let's say we get a check and the doctor comes back and is like, oh, I'm so sorry to tell you, but like your cervix is actually swollen and now you're more like a 6.5 or 7.
Oh my word.
A lot of times in the hospital, that will deem you as a C-section, right?
Yeah.
It can be a really big mind fuck where you're like, oh my God, I did all this work. I was 10.
Yeah.
I lost all these centimeters. Like you feel so defeated. So just like talk us through that.
So, okay, this is going to be an interesting answer. So I actually have seen cervixes go backwards before, like when, like, let's say like sometimes we'll break water. We hardly do that unless somebody's requested or unless there's like a reason why we need to move things forward. And so a lot of times you'll have that like water bag pressure on the cervix. Then it'll be like 9 centimeters and you're like, oh great, we just need to put, move that baby down and it'll, and it does happen where sometimes we do that and the baby just comes out.
Oh yeah.
Like, tired and we're trying to like help to prevent maternal exhaustion and having to go get an epidural at the hospital. But sometimes we'll break it, and that pressure of the water bag is like pushing, giving really good pressure on the cervix. You break the water bag and the baby hasn't come down. Yeah. And so the cervix will just go and it'll kind of come back. So I see that sometimes happen. And then I also see sometimes where people get scared and their cervixes go backwards. But I have to tell you, in that case that you're talking about, I don't think I've ever, and remember, I've been to nearly 1,000 births. I don't think I've ever seen a cervix that was really, truly 10 centimeters and then it went backwards. So here's something I'll tell you about anatomy. Okay. So like here's the cervix, here's the
Mhm.
baby's head, right?
Mhm.
So, too bad I don't have a baby with
I
me.
know.
So when we say a cervix is 10 centimeters dilated, it's not like, oh, look, its cervix is 10 centimeters right now. When we say cervix is 10 centimeters is when we can no longer feel the cervix. So the baby's head has gone past it. So the only time that you would feel nothing and a cervix would go back is if somebody got the check wrong. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah.
So what can sometimes happen is you can have a baby there. I mean, so like, let's say you have like a 4 or 5 centimeter, 6 centimeter cervix, right? So that cervix could go to 7 centimeters, and then maybe it, for whatever reason, different change of position or fear, whatever, the cervix could go a little bit more closed. I've seen that happen quite a bit, especially in hospital transfers, because people get really nervous and scared, right? But once that baby's descended low enough that cervix is all the way behind its head, to the point where when I'm a provider and I'm doing a check, I feel all around, I feel nothing at all, right? Nothing. The only way that cervix could come back in front of that baby's head and swell is if it wasn't dilated in the first place, and
Mm.
the provider just didn't feel that there was still cervix left, or if the baby somehow went back up, which could happen if there was like some kind of cord issue or something, where
Right.
the baby, where like maybe the contractions like push the baby down, but then when the contraction's over, the cord kind of like bounces it
Okay.
back up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But when we say someone's 10 centimeters, it's not because I'm like, I feel your cervix and it's 10 centimeters wide. It's because the cervix is gone.
Got
Like,
it.
I no longer feel it.
Mhm.
And that's how I know somebody's fully dilated.
Mhm.
So they're not really 10 centimeters. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Someone could be 9 centimeters because you can still feel cervix.
Yeah.
But 10 centimeters doesn't necessarily mean like I feel a 10 centimeter cervix. It means I feel no cervix. That means you're fully dilated, your cervix is gone. So I'm wondering if in your scenarios, if they just missed the cervix, thought it was gone. Maybe there was a big old capit in the baby's head, and so they like mistook, like the shape of the baby's head. I don't know. But cervix is kind of,
It makes me wonder a lot of things, like, did they push for a couple hours and then get scared, right? Were they pushing
uh-huh.
so hard and not making any progress because they didn't feel comfortable with what we were doing? Maybe the provider, maybe the position they were in, maybe the hospital setting in general, but they just didn't realize it,
Yeah.
maybe, I guess there are just a ton of things that could have happened.
Yeah, so that said, like I don't know how I feel about believing in cervixes getting swollen by being pushed on. I
Yeah.
think that they get swollen for other reasons. I think that a lot of times it's from a malposition of a baby's head, but cervixes usually, when they get to 8-9 centimeters, are very soft and squishy. I have had that happen with my clients though too, where I was like, wow, you're 9 centimeters and your cervix is like almost gone, and then they like sit there for a minute on a birth stool and the cervix goes to 8 centimeters. So I have had that but I've never had it where someone's been completely fully dilated. There's no cervix at all.
Yeah.
And the cervix has come back and is swollen.
So what would cause that they were sitting on the stool and had regressed a
Just
little
gravity. Just gravity. Yeah. Just like really intense gravity. But fear too. I mean, in those cases, like I think sometimes, depending upon the position of the baby, and that's like always like, what position is this baby coming out? And if a mom hasn't been moving a lot in her labor, then sometimes babies do get stuck in weird positions. And even if she has been moving a lot in labor, so I don't know, the cervix is like such an enigma, it's like so,
It really is.
serious, and like why it does the things that it does. But I do think that with it, kind of what you were just alluding to is that, I mean, it wasn't an illusion, you like actually said it, but I think that we discount, because we put birth into this like science field, and we've like added all these numbers onto it. And we said like, this is how birth looks. And it's like 0 to 10 centimeters. And then you're supposed to do that every hour. And we've like applied numbers. And I think people forget about this whole like spiritual, mental, emotional component, like I'm not sick when I'm having a baby. I'm like bringing a human into this world. Like whatever you believe in, I'm still opening up some portal somewhere to bring this human here,
Yeah.
And so like, and one of the physical portals is the cervix.
Mm.
And so I do believe that our emotions and the fear play a role in what that portal does, you know, what that cervix does. That might sound like really like silly to some people for me to talk about like, for me to talk about like the, you know, the spiritual side of birth. But I think that we're forgetting that we're bringing humans. I mean, that's how humans like enter this realm, is, you know, by coming through a woman's body. And so I wouldn't be one bit surprised if, you know, that there was some fear or some like where your clients were just like, absolutely not, I'm not doing this. Like, don't make me do this. And then that cervix, you know, kind of did come back. It's unlikely that if the cervix was really truly all gone, that the baby moved upward, unless there was like a very tight cord or something that kind of like was bouncing sort of like with the contractions. Sometimes too, you can check somebody during a contraction and their cervix is like way more dilated than when you check them not during a contraction. You know, so it could have been that when they were pushing, their cervix really was opening, but when they weren't, then, you know, their cervix came back. My gut instinct from what you're telling me is that the cervix wasn't all gone in the first place. And that they did have her pushing when her body wasn't quite ready. So that kind of leads us to like what you were asking about the, were you asking about like just letting somebody just chill for a minute? Did you already?
I was just asking about like practice pushing and how do we avoid a swollen cervix. So I do want to mention that the fear that Melissa's talking about doesn't always have to be like fear of your provider or like fear of the hospital system. Sometimes it's within yourself. Sometimes it's fear that you can't do this. Sometimes it's fear of the pain that's to come. Sometimes it's fear of pushing your baby out. Sometimes it's the fear of the realness of like, oh shit, as soon as I push this baby out, I am like, it's parent. I like have to be
I'm a mom.
Yeah, like I am, it's game time. Like if this wasn't game time enough, it's like the real deal after this baby gets here. We have heard so many people who had these mental leaps, these mental like hoops that they had to leap through during labor, from our clients who said like, you know, I spent so much time at 9 centimeters. And now looking back after me and my partner have kind of debriefed the birth, we found that I was actually really scared to push. I was actually really scared to have the baby. I was actually like so caught up in the idea of the pain that was to come, even though I was 9 centimeters.
Yeah, totally.
In the middle of it, you know, just always have to be like fear of your provider. Mental and emotional fear can hold up things too.
Absolutely. I mean, that is, I would venture to say that the biggest obstruction we see in labor is mental. Like 100%. I mean, maybe do get in weird positions, right? But like that doesn't happen as often as I see them mental obstructions, you know? So that's like why like that thought work and that mindfulness and that meditation and the relaxation practices are so important, and kind of that concept of the acceptance that I told you about. And that doesn't mean, I mean, I've had people who have done amazing thought work and have done like all of the things that they're supposed to do, you know, with meditation and mindfulness, and they still have a difficult birth, you know, and we can never predict. And so I always hesitate to like tell people like, if you just do the work, it's going to be great. The chances are much better if you do the work, but it doesn't guarantee anything. And I think that the universe like brings us a lot of times the kind of labor and birth that we're supposed to have.
Yeah, I definitely think that everyone's labor is a life lesson. Like there are things you have to learn. There are things that every human, even partners that go through it with you, there are things you have to learn. Some of it is relinquishing control. Some of it is learning how to go with the flow. Some of it is learning how to be in control. How do you advocate? How do you hold those boundaries even when you're, you know, they're really being challenged by someone in an authoritative figure? Like there are a lot of lessons to learn.
And I mean ultimately, you know, like we're getting humans here, and so no matter how it's done, like it's hard, it's really, really, really hard, no matter how you do it, no matter if you do it without medication, no matter if you have a planned C-section, like no matter how you do it, it's really, 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 really hard.
Yeah.
My mom had me by C-section, and it was a very difficult birth for her, and she had people tell her that she wasn't going to love me as much because I wasn't born vaginally. And my mom's like the most loving human on the planet. and I feel like I just had a beautiful childhood. We still have an amazing relationship in it. And I know that people feel that way sometimes, like now I'm not going to bond enough with my baby, or I didn't do it the right way, or I wish that it could have happened this way. But it's just hard. Like I was a midwife when I had my last baby, and I got preeclampsia, I had a seizure, it turned into help. I got rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. Like it was a shit show. It was bad news, and I was like, what? I did everything right. Like I'm a midwife. Like I know how to do this, And I'm really, really grateful that, I had a hospital to go to, because they were able to give me max sulfate and keep me from dying. But it was hard, and it made me really, really, really sad. But I think like that acceptance, that's why I talk about that, like being the number one piece that you got to get into place, because the more accepting you are of how things go. I mean, we can plan, we can prepare all we want, right? But things are still going to happen, in ways that we don't expect. And like you were talking about, like, you think things are moving straight forward, and then you have this flipping swollen cervix, and what are you going to do with that now? So yeah.
I'm the queen of saying, you don't get to control how your birth trends folds, like, unfolds, but you do get to control how you respond and react to everything that pops up in labor. And that's where your control comes from. A lot of people think that control is in like, I want to choose when I get to the hospital. I want to choose, an epidural. I want to choose my provider. I want to choose when I get the balloon. I want to choose when this. It's not so much like that. It is more like, all right, your labor has presented us with this situation. Here are your options. What option feels most aligned with you? Where do you feel most powerful in our next step? Like which next step makes you feel in control? And that's where your control comes in labor, you guys.
I love that. Yes, I love that. I mean, that's it's an age-old wisdom, right? Like the Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps, and he wrote that book, Man's Search for Meaning. Like that was what he came to, was that it was that was all he had control, that he had control, not even like what he ate, or whether he ate, or how he was treated, or whether he would live or die. The only thing he had control over was his mind, and his attitude, and how he decided to like be in the world in that moment, and I mean, we are all faced with very difficult things in our lives, and birth is just one of those like very special times in which we can grow, as women, and use these opportunities to like you said, like learn all these lessons, and just try to be better humans. Be better humans. Yep.
Okay, I have just one last topic that I want to talk about that we've kind of mentioned throughout, and that's laboring down. So I have seen laboring down be fantastic so many times. It is more common in medical births and in people who have epidurals and medical pain relief, right? We don't so much see it as often in unmedicated labors. Recently, both in hospitals and on social media, which I have looked into, ACOG does say that laboring down doesn't make too much of a difference. But I have found that nurses and providers are starting to get super antsy and are less willing or eager to allow people to labor down in the hospitals. They really lay the heat on heavy about like, well, we got to get this baby out. Like, well, you got to work to get a baby out, like, well, you're here to have a baby. Well, we can't just wait around all day for your baby. Hospital, hospital policy says that you really need to be pushing within 2 hours of being 10 centimeters. Okay, yes, but also laboring down is an age-old thing that has proved to work, centuries and centuries long. So talk to us about laboring down. What should we be considering? What do we need to know? And maybe how can we navigate that conversation if we are in a hospital and they're really kind of laying it on thick of like, you really need to start pushing, but you're not ready because you've listened to Melissa and Hee, and you're not feeling that urge to push.
I love that. Well, so I think first of all, so when you talk about laboring down, so like at out of hospital where we don't have the medication, if somebody, what I call laboring down is not really laboring down, but like if somebody's 10 centimeters and they don't feel an urge to push, then I call it the rest and be thankful stage that we talked about earlier. And but if you're in a hospital and you have an epidural, then you're not going to feel that urge to push usually until it gets pretty intense, right? So at an out of hospital birth without medication, you would probably start feeling it and you would start doing some little pushes, right? So out of hospital, I would put people in the bed and let them sleep, you know? And you know, you said the ACOG said it doesn't make that much of a difference, and it might not make that much of a difference for how far the baby moves down, but it makes a huge difference for the mom being able to rest.
And like, how long you push?
Yeah. If she can sleep for 2 hours, what's that going to do for her? For how like how much energy she can have to push a baby out, you know? So really, really important. And care providers do not know about the rest and be thankful stage. So that's something that people can talk about beforehand and can say, when I'm 10 centimeters, if I don't feel a very strong urge to push, I would really like to rest. And hopefully what you hope has happened is that when people have gotten an epidural, that they've actually rested because I know some people get the epidural and they're like, oh my gosh, and they like want to process like the labor, you know, like while they're not feeling the pain, you're still having a baby, like go to sleep. I've had clients do that a lot. And I'll be like, I had a client recently where she was like turned away from me, like resting on her side. And I like looked over, I'm like, are you on your phone? Like, get off your phone and go to sleep. In a very nice, gentle midwife.
Totally. In a very loving,
yes.
Rest.
She kind of laughed. She thought it was funny. She was like, I know, I need to sleep. But I think she was just like so relieved that she wasn't in that long labor anymore. She was like, I need to process through this. I need to tell my friends, I need to check like Instagram. Like, I cannot go to sleep right now. I got to do some processing, which is completely understandable. But really, really, really important that if people haven't slept, like maybe they've been awake for 2 nights laboring and now they have the epidural. They're not going to push that baby out as well and as effectively if they haven't slept than if they have. So my big, huge thing, and most providers won't say no to this. Well, let me back up for just a minute and I'm going to tell you how you do it. I'm going to tell you like, here's the way to do it. Hospitals are businesses. I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I counsel women. Like I do coaching for women in business. Like I'm a big, huge proponent of like, women should have money and they should know how to manage their money and they should know how to invest their money and blah, 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 blah. So I own 5 businesses. I get being a business owner. I have employees. I get it. I get the bottom line. I get it. There are some things I want to do. Like I own this healthy food business and there are like certain things that I want to do to make it even better, but like it's going to cost me $5 billion and I won't make a profit and my business will fail. And I won't be able to like offer that to people anymore, you know? So like, I get why hospitals do what they do, but people don't think of hospitals as businesses. They think of hospitals as a healing place that the government has given to us to help us, but that's not the case. Businesses are private entities almost always, and they're owned by a corporation almost always. I have 7 corporations or something like that registered to my name. So I'm not like I'm more anti like big business, like affecting people than I am like business owners, you know? But so they need to get people in the hospital bed and then they need to get people out of the hospital bed. Because if you have somebody who wants to come into your space and pay you thousands of dollars, you got to make a space for them, right? And if you don't, you're not going to meet your bottom line. You're not going to meet payroll. You're not going to meet your bills that month. You're not going to blah, 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 right? So I get it, right? I get like that you need to get people in and out, but it's a horrible, terrible business model for treating families who are having babies. Like it's the worst thing ever. It's the hugest part of hospital revenue. For many hospitals, it's 80% of their revenue. So when people come in, they're like, I just want to rest for 2 hours because I'm not feeling an overwhelming urge to push. I would like to have that rest. Of course they're going to be like, no, we've got instructions coming in like 1 hour, you know? Yeah. So I mean, that's why, that's why that's why they don't want you to rest. That's why they want to get the baby out. Also, once you get to the hospital, it is the goal. Like you said, it's the goal. Get the baby out. Once you're in the hospital, get the baby out. So number one thing to do is stay at home as long as possible. The number two thing to do is, I think if you just frame it in a way that like you need more rest, I think that's a hard thing to say no to.
Yeah.
I think if you say, is my baby doing okay? Yes. Am I doing okay? Yes. Do my vitals look good? Yes. I really, really need to rest. I'm really, really tired. And if they say, we don't want you to rest, we want to get this baby out, you can say, sorry, I'm not. I mean, if it really comes to that, which hopefully it doesn't, but if it comes to that, I mean, you always have the final say. You can say, I'm going to sleep for 2 hours. Please come back in and we'll start pushing in 2 hours. Unless I feel an overwhelming urge, I'll push my call button and call you back in. So I think that that's like probably your best way to ask for the laboring down or for the rest and be thankful stage is to just rest.
And here's the thing, y'all, like your uterus will actually move your baby down. So as you're napping, you are not having to exert all of this like strenuous hard labor because your uterus is still contracting. Your uterus is doing all that work. It is moving your baby down. We don't have time to talk about it now, but your pelvis has like different stations. So if you're out there listening and you're pregnant and you're like, oh my God, I don't even know what that means. Google the stations, find someone to teach you. You can find it on the Birth Lounge app. You can find it in the Birth Lounge membership. You can follow Melissa. She has information about this. This conversation has been so good. I mean, I'm going to have a hard time picking between last week's and this week's conversation to see which one is better because this was just like such a wealth of knowledge. Melissa, if people wanted to hire you as your midwife, talk to you about women's health. I know you do work with PCOS, and then other birth workers as well. Maybe there are people out there looking for mentorship for business stuff. Where can people find you and connect with you about all of these things? And then do you have anything else that I didn't mention coming up? How can people hang out with you and absorb your wisdom and knowledge?
Thank you so much for asking. I love that. Well, first I should say, if we have anybody out there who wants to be a doula, you should come to this. Actually, I'm doing a birth workers retreat in Costa Rica and I've got like 3 spots left. That's in November. That'll be super fun. I'm also on Instagram. So Melissa Chappell, if you search Instagram for Melissa Chappell, you'll find me on Instagram. I actually have a very full practice and I usually get full like when people get their pregnancy test. So I take very few clients and that's just so that I can give them all the love and care that I want to. But that website is Songbird Maternity. That's all my midwife stuff. And then my birth centers are Utah Birth Suites and that's also on Instagram. And Utah Birth Suites, I do a lot of work with just women's health in general. So like nutrition, PCOS, just like female reproductive health is what I do a lot of. Thyroid stuff, adrenal stuff, like a lot of those kinds of things. And then I'm just, I've noticed that in the last years, as you know this, everybody's noticed this, that women are just like increasingly lonely, right? They're just feeling more lonely and they just so like don't have space to come together. And I think you and I were talking earlier about how social media is brutal, often brutal, very, very brutal, especially for women, I think, who have like really sincere questions. I think sometimes people destroy them for not already knowing the answer or for asking the question in the first place. So I'm launching a big women's community and we're just going to talk about things that like, we're going to go deep and we're going to be kind and sweet and gentle with each other. And it's subscription based and I'll do lives with people and we'll answer lots of health questions and do lots of fun stuff like recipes and classes, courses, just all kinds of stuff having to do with women's health and better sleep and better reproductive health and like fertility awareness, just like everything you could think of. And I have a component of that for just birth workers as well. So we talk about the business side of things and just like how you can best take care of your clients. And so I'm super, super excited. So that'll be launching soon and all that information will be like so my email list is probably the best way to get information from me. So people could just sign up on my email at melissachappell.com. And get all that information.
So many things going on. I love being in the energy of other wave makers, of people who see how different birth can be, how different women's health can be, how different reproduction could be supported if we did things just like even slightly different. I feel like there are so many tiny tweaks, low-hanging fruit that we could make or we could grab, but our country, for some reason, just doesn't do it. Sigh.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, this was such a fun conversation. If you have questions for Melissa and I, if you want to learn more about pushing, don't forget we have the Secret Sauce to Pushing course. It's $99 and it'll teach you everything that you need to know to effectively and efficiently push out your baby. If you want to get a hold of Melissa, you know how to do that. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can check it out on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, or our email. Lots of places to connect. All right, you guys, we'll see you next week. Goodbye. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next time on the Birth Lounge podcast. Until then, head over to Instagram and find us at Tranquility by Hihi and give us a follow. You can also check us out at thebirthlounge.com.